He thought it was just another night on the job mopping floors and keeping his head down. But when the snowstorm hit, the janitor was told to drive the CEO herself. She didn't know the man behind the wheel had once pulled her from the wreckage of a burning car. What begins as a simple ride turns into a life-changing revelation under an old bridge and a secret so explosive it could destroy her empire and expose a powerful man's darkest truth. Because just as their worlds collide, a child whispers words that stop everyone cold. "Mommy says you're my daddy." Now the janitor and the CEO must decide to risk everything for the truth, or stay silent and let innocence be crushed. What happens when the invisible man becomes the only one who can save her again? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead as Eli Carter guided his mop across the polished floor of Meridian Hospital's East Wing. The late-night quiet was broken only by the steady swish-swish of his work and the distant beeping of medical equipment. At this hour, most visitors had gone home, leaving the hallways peaceful. "Looking mighty fine there, Carter," Officer Henson called out, his boots squeaking against the fresh-mopped surface. "You could eat off these floors." Eli glanced up with a warm smile. "Better not let the infection control nurses hear you say that." He leaned on his mop handle, his dark eyes twinkling. "Though I appreciate the compliment." Through the large windows lining the corridor, fat snowflakes had started falling, dancing in the glow of the parking lot lights. Henson moved closer to the glass, shaking his head. "Weather Service says we're in for a real mess tonight. 8 to 10 inches before morning." "Maya's going to love that," Eli chuckled, thinking of his daughter. "She's still holding out hope for a snow day, even though her classes are all online now." "Smart girl," Henson said. "Always looking for the silver lining." "Gets that from her mama." Eli's voice softened, as it always did when he thought of his late wife. He dipped the mop back into the bucket, the familiar motions keeping his hands busy. Rachel used to say every storm had a blessing hidden in it somewhere. Henson nodded, understanding in his eyes. He'd been at Meridian long enough to know Eli's story, how he'd raised Maya alone since she was 8. "Your wife was a wise woman." "That she was." Eli wrung out the mop with practiced efficiency. "Speaking of storms, how's that new grandbaby of yours handling her first winter?" Henson's face lit up. He reached for his phone, already pulling up photos. "Little Miss Emma's discovered snow angels. Here, look at this one." The crackle of Henson's radio interrupted them. "Officer Henson, please respond." He clicked the talk button. "Henson here. We need you in the security office ASAP. It's urgent." Henson exchanged a look with Eli. "On my way." To Eli, he said, "Duty calls. Stay warm out there." "You too," Eli replied, returning to his work. The next section of floor needed attention. A coffee spill from earlier had left a sticky residue. Eli mixed a special solution in his bucket, one he'd learned worked best on stubborn stains. In his 15 years at Meridian, he'd mastered all the little tricks of his trade. Some people might look down on janitorial work, but Eli took pride in it. Clean floors meant fewer infections. Safe hallways meant fewer falls. Every surface he sanitized helped protect patients and staff alike. He'd seen enough during his time as an Army medic to know that small details could make big differences. A group of nurses hurried past, offering tired smiles and quiet thanks. Eli knew most of them by name. Sarah from pediatrics, Joe from the ER, Maria from oncology. They were good people, dedicated to their work just like he was to his. The snow was falling harder now, thick flakes swirling in the darkness. Eli thought about his drive home, grateful that Maya was staying at a friend's house tonight to work on a school project. At least he wouldn't have to worry about her being out in this weather. He was just finishing the last stretch of hallway when Henson reappeared, moving quickly. "Eli, we need you in the security office." Eli straightened, noting the urgency in his friend's voice. "Everything okay?" "You know Miss Sterling, the CEO?" "Sure, I see her around sometimes." Eli kept his tone neutral, though he'd noticed how she barely seemed to register the maintenance staff's existence most days. "Her driver called in sick, and with this storm, the car service can't get here." She's got some fancy charity thing tonight, that big gala at the convention center. Henson gestured toward the security office. They're asking if you can drive her. Eli blinked in surprise. Me? You've got a clean driving record, you know the city, and most importantly, you're here. Henson's expression was sympathetic. I know it's asking a lot, especially this late. No, it's fine, Eli said, already gathering his cleaning supplies. Let me just put these away and change my shirt. Can't show up looking like I just finished mopping floors. Even though you did, Henson said with a small smile. In the maintenance closet, Eli quickly stored his equipment and pulled a fresh uniform shirt from his locker. As he buttoned it up, he couldn't help but wonder what Rachel would say about this turn of events. Probably something wise and funny about storms and blessings. He straightened his collar and headed for the security office, his steps steady and sure. Whatever this night might bring, he'd handle it with the same quiet competence he brought to everything else. After all, it was just another way to help keep things running smoothly at Meridian, even if it wasn't in his usual job description. The security office door was propped open, spilling fluorescent light into the hallway. As Eli approached, he could hear voices inside discussing alternate routes to avoid the worst of the storm. He took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and stepped through the doorway, ready to do what needed to be done. Eli stood in the small janitor's closet, his hands moving methodically as he unbuttoned his work shirt. The cramped space smelled of pine cleaner and bleach, familiar scents that usually brought him comfort. Tonight, they just reminded him how out of place he would be in this new task. The spare jacket hung on a rusty hook, carefully preserved for special occasions. He'd bought it at a thrift store 3 years ago, but its dark blue fabric still held its shape well. As he slipped it on, the material felt stiff and formal compared to his usual uniform. His reflection in the small mirror above the sink showed a man in his mid-50s, his close-cropped hair peppered with gray, dark skin lined with years of quiet responsibility. The jacket fit well enough, though it couldn't quite hide that he was just a janitor about to drive the hospital's CEO. Out of habit, his hand went to his neck, fingers finding the chain of his dog tags beneath his white undershirt. He pulled them out, the metal warm from resting against his skin. The stamped letters had worn down over the decades, but he could still read them by heart. Carter, Elijah, J. The tags had been with him through 2 tours as a medic, through the birth of his daughter, through Helen's death. They'd seen him through every hard moment when he needed to be stronger than he felt. Just another mission, he murmured to himself, tucking the tags back under his shirt. The metal settled against his chest like an anchor. He straightened his collar one last time and grabbed the set of keys security had given him. They felt foreign in his hand, nothing like his familiar ring of maintenance keys. These were for the hospital's executive vehicle, a car worth more than he made in a year. The hallway outside was still quiet, his footsteps echoing on the floors he'd mopped earlier. Night shift nurses nodded to him as he passed, a few doing double takes at his changed appearance. He gave them his usual gentle smile, though his stomach was tight with uncertainty. The hospital's main lobby stretched before him, all polished marble and soaring windows. Snow swirled against the glass, the storm picking up strength. The security desk stood empty. Officer Henson had probably gone to escort Miss Navarro down from her office. Eli checked his watch. 10:15 p.m. The gala at the Meridian Foundation started at 11:00, and the venue was across town. The timing would be tight, especially in this weather. He walked to the front entrance, his reflection ghosting across the glass doors. The spare jacket looked decent enough, he decided. At least he wouldn't embarrass anyone. The hospital's executive car waited at the curb, snow already dusting its black paint. Eli brushed off the accumulation with his sleeve, then tested the driver's door. The interior was all leather and polished wood, with that distinct new car smell. He adjusted the seat and mirrors, familiarizing himself with the controls. It had been a while since he'd driven anything this nice, but the basics were the same. He stepped back out into the cold snow crunching under his shoes. The wind had picked up, carrying ice crystals that stung his cheeks. Eli pulled his jacket closer, positioning himself by the rear passenger door. Through the glass entrance, he could see movement, the click of heels on marble, voices carrying faintly. The doors swung open. Rosa Navarro emerged, clutching a leather portfolio to her chest. Even after a 14-hour day, she carried herself with rigid poise. Her charcoal suit was immaculate, her dark hair swept into a severe bun. But Eli noticed the shadows under her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands as she pulled her coat tighter. Officer Henson held the door. "Miss Navarro, this is Eli Carter. He's been with us 15 years, perfect driving record. You'll be in good hands." She barely glanced at Eli, her attention on her phone. "Fine. We need to make up time. The foundation board doesn't tolerate lateness." Eli stepped forward, opening the car door with a smooth motion. "Evening, ma'am. I'll get you there safely." Something in his voice, the quiet confidence perhaps, made her pause. She looked at him properly for the first time, taking in his pressed jacket and steady gaze. For a moment, her professional mask slipped, revealing exhaustion and what might have been loneliness. Then it was gone, replaced by careful neutrality. "Thank you," she said stiffly, accepting his offered hand as she slid into the back seat. Her fingers were cold against his palm, and he noticed she was shivering slightly despite her warm coat. Eli closed the door carefully, shielding her from the worst of the wind. Through the window, he could see her already focused on her phone again, the blue light casting harsh shadows across her face. The snow fell harder now, gathering on his shoulders as he walked around to the driver's side. The wipers swept back and forth across the windshield in a steady rhythm as thick snowflakes danced in the headlights. Eli kept his hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, maintaining a careful distance from the few other vehicles braving the storm. The sleek black sedan handled well in the snow, but he wasn't taking any chances. "The weather report said it would clear by midnight," Eli said softly, breaking the tense silence. He glanced briefly at Rosa in the rearview mirror. She sat rigidly in the back seat, her phone's blue light illuminating her face as she typed rapidly. "Let's hope they're right for once," she replied without looking up. Her voice was clipped, professional, but Eli caught the slight tremor in it. The storm was making her nervous. A gust of wind buffeted the car, and Rosa's fingers tightened on her phone. Eli adjusted his grip on the wheel, keeping them steady. "Don't worry, ma'am. I drove much worse conditions than this in Afghanistan." That got her attention. She looked up, meeting his eyes in the mirror for the first time. "You served?" "Yes, ma'am. Army medic, 8 years. He kept his voice low and steady, the same tone he'd used to calm wounded soldiers. "Did 3 tours." Rosa's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Thank you for your service." There was a pause, then, "I didn't know you were a veteran." "Most people don't," Eli said with a gentle smile. "They just see the mop and bucket." She shifted in her seat, and he could feel her studying him more closely now. "How long have you worked at Meridian?" "Going on 6 years now." A semi-truck passed them, spraying slush across the windshield. Eli waited for the wipers to clear it before continuing. "My daughter was starting middle school. Needed something stable, with good benefits." "You have a daughter?" "Maya. She's 17 now, senior in high school." Pride warmed his voice. "Planning to study nursing at State next fall." Rosa's phone buzzed, but she didn't immediately return to it. "Following in your medical footsteps?" "Something like that." Eli chuckled softly. "Though she'll go a lot further than battlefield first aid." The highway stretched ahead, the snow creating a tunnel of white in their headlights. Traffic was thinning out as the storm intensified. Eli switched to the right lane, reducing their speed slightly. "You have a very calming presence," Rosa observed suddenly. "Is that from your medical training?" "Partly." Eli checked the mirrors, keeping track of the few vehicles around them. "But mostly, it's just experience, learning to stay steady when things get rough." She nodded, then finally looked down at her buzzing phone. Her fingers flew across the screen as she responded to what seemed like an endless stream of messages. "The board members are getting anxious about the weather. They're worried about attendance numbers for the gala." "We'll get you there safely, ma'am," Eli assured her. "That's my job tonight." The next few minutes passed in relative quiet, broken only by the swish of wipers and the muffled sound of tires on snow. Eli kept his attention on the road, while Rosa alternated between her phone and watching the storm through the window. Suddenly, emergency lights flashed ahead, red and blue cutting through the snowfall. Eli slowed the car further, squinting to make out the situation. A large truck had jackknifed across several lanes, its trailer blocking most of the highway. Police cars were already on scene, officers directing traffic. "Looks like we'll need to take a detour," Eli said calmly, though he noticed Rosa's sharp intake of breath. He checked the GPS quickly. "There's an alternate route under the old Harrington Bridge. It'll add about 10 minutes, but it's safer than trying to squeeze past that truck." Rosa's face had gone pale. Her phone slipped from her fingers onto the seat beside her. The Harrington Bridge?" "Yes, ma'am. It's not far." Eli watched her in the mirror with growing concern. She had pressed herself back against the seat, her hands gripping the leather so tightly her knuckles were white. "Are you all right, Miss Navarro?" She swallowed hard, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. I can't." Understanding dawned as Eli took the exit ramp toward the bridge. He'd heard about the accident years ago, a car crash under that very bridge, a woman trapped in a burning vehicle. He hadn't known it was her. The old stone bridge loomed ahead, its dark arch a shadowy mouth in the swirling snow. Rosa's breathing had become erratic, her eyes wide with fear. Eli could see her trembling now, the composed CEO facade crumbling as memories overwhelmed her. They had no choice. The bridge was the only viable detour, and turning back wasn't an option with the jackknife truck blocking the highway. Eli guided the car toward the underpass, his heart aching for the terrified woman in his back seat. The bridge's shadow fell across them as they approached, and Rosa let out a small, choked sound. Her hands flew to her throat as if she couldn't breathe, panic taking full hold as the darkness of the underpass waited to swallow them. A horn blared in the distance, followed by the screech of brakes. Rosa's head snapped up from her phone. Through the windshield, emergency lights flashed red and blue against the falling snow. A semi-truck had jackknifed ahead, blocking most of the highway. "We'll need to take shelter until they clear it," Eli said calmly, steering the sedan toward the underpass of the old Harrington Bridge. The tires crunched on salt and gravel as they pulled beneath the massive concrete structure. Rosa's breathing quickened. Her phone slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. The shadows of the bridge loomed overhead, dark and familiar. Too familiar. "No, not here," she whispered, her voice rising. "Anywhere but here." Her hands gripped the leather seat until her knuckles turned white. Eli turned off the engine but left the interior lights on. In the rearview mirror, he saw Rosa's face drain of color. Her eyes were wide and unfocused, staring at something only she could see. "Miss Navarro?" he asked, gently. She didn't respond. Her chest heaved with rapid, shallow breaths. The panic attack was taking hold, dragging her back to that other snowy night. Without hesitation, Eli got out of the car and opened her door, letting in a burst of cold air. He knelt beside her seat, his voice steady and sure. "Ma'am, I need you to focus on my voice," he said. "You're safe. You're in the present. Can you hear me?" Rosa managed a small nod, but her breathing remained erratic. "We're going to breathe together," Eli continued in that same calm cadence. "In for 4 counts, hold, then out for 6. Stay with me, ma'am." Rosa froze. Those words, that voice. Something clicked in her mind, cutting through the panic. "Again," Eli instructed. "In for 4. He counted slowly, watching as she struggled to follow. "Hold, now, out for 6. They breathed together, the sound mixing with the muffled howl of wind outside. Gradually, Rosa's shoulders relaxed. Her grip on the seat loosened. "That's it," Eli encouraged. "One more time. In for 4, hold out for 6. Stay with me, ma'am." Rosa's eyes snapped to his face. Recognition dawned in her expression, mixed with disbelief. "It was you," she whispered. "That night, After the crash. Those exact words. Eli stood slowly, brushing snow from his knees. He adjusted his jacket, buying time before meeting her gaze. "Yes, ma'am," he said quietly. "I was driving home from my shift, saw the accident happen." "You pulled me out," Rosa continued, her voice stronger now. "Before the car." She couldn't finish the sentence. Eli nodded, his expression somber. "I helped, then left, before the emergency crews arrived. Seemed safer that way." Understanding crossed Rosa's face. A black man at a chaotic accident scene, even one helping, she knew exactly what he meant. "You saved my life," she said. "And I never knew who you were, all this time." "Just did what anyone would do," Eli replied, gently closing her door and returning to the driver's seat. He started the engine, checking the road ahead where emergency vehicles were still working to clear the accident. Rosa watched him in the rearview mirror, really seeing him for the first time. The steady hands on the wheel, the quiet dignity in his bearing, the gentle strength that had guided her through two of the worst moments of her life. The emergency lights ahead finally stopped flashing. The road was clearing. Eli put the car in drive, easing them back onto the highway. Neither spoke as they emerged from under the bridge, leaving its shadows behind. The snow had lightened to a gentle flutter, and ahead, the city lights glowed like distant stars. The Meridian Horizons Gala sparkled under a cascade of crystal chandeliers. Eli pulled the sedan up to the circular driveway, where valets in red jackets stood ready despite the falling snow. He brought the car to a gentle stop, then hurried around to open Rosa's door. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying a new warmth that hadn't been there at the start of their journey. Her elegant black evening gown swept around her legs as she stepped out, and she paused to adjust the silk shawl around her shoulders. "I'll find parking and wait in the service area," Eli said, his professional demeanor firmly back in place. The moment under the bridge had passed, but something had shifted between them, a quiet understanding that neither mentioned. Rosa nodded, then turned toward the grand entrance where other guests were arriving. Their designer shoes clicked against the heated pathway, which had been cleared of snow. Through the towering glass doors, Eli caught glimpses of floating champagne trays and elaborate ice sculptures. After parking in a quiet corner of the lot, Eli made his way through the service entrance. The back hallways buzzed with activity, waiters balancing trays, kitchen staff rushing with last-minute preparations, and cleaning crews standing ready. He found a spot near the edge of the ballroom where he could keep an eye on things without being too visible. The massive room glowed golden under the chandeliers. Circular tables draped in white linens surrounded a wooden dance floor, each centerpiece featuring cascading white orchids. The hospital's wealthiest donors filled the space, the women in designer gowns and the men in perfectly tailored tuxedos. Rosa moved through the crowd with practiced grace. She stopped to greet board members and major donors, her smile professional but never quite reaching her eyes. Eli noticed how she kept her shoulders straight, her chin lifted, armor for navigating this glittering world. "Rosa, darling!" A tall man in an expensive tuxedo strode toward her, his silver hair perfectly styled. Sterling Wade, Rosa's fiancé and the hospital's biggest donor. He wrapped an arm around her waist and pressed a kiss to her cheek. "I was starting to worry. The storm didn't give you too much trouble?" "No, we managed," Rosa replied. "The hospital's driver was very capable." Sterling's eyes skimmed past Eli without really seeing him. "Good, good. Come, the Carmichaels were just asking about the new pediatric wing." Eli watched as Sterling led Rosa to a group of older couples. The men wore heavy gold watches and confident smirks. The women dripped with diamonds and surgical enhancements. Sterling launched into what seemed to be a well-rehearsed speech about the hospital's expansion plans. A young waiter stumbled nearby, nearly dropping his tray of champagne flutes. Eli steadied him with a quick hand. "Easy there, son. Take a deep breath." "Thanks," the waiter whispered, his face flushed. "First big event. So nervous." "You're doing fine," Eli assured him. "Just remember, one foot in front of the other." From his position, Eli could hear Sterling's voice carrying over the crowd. He was telling some story about a recent golf trip, his laugh just a touch too loud. Rosa stood beside him, her smile fixed in place as Sterling gestured with his champagne glass. And speaking of service, Sterling's voice rose, commanding attention. I must say, the help these days. He paused for effect, glancing around the circle of wealthy guests. Well, you know what they say. Good help is hard to find, but at least it's entertaining to watch them try. The group laughed, a practiced social sound. Rosa's smile tightened, a flash of something. Anger? Shame? Crossing her face before she could hide it. Her eyes darted to where Eli stood, then quickly away. Why, just the other day. Sterling continued, clearly warming to his audience. I watched one of the cleaning staff trying to operate our new automated floor scrubber. Like watching a monkey try to solve a puzzle. More laughter followed, harder this time. Eli's face remained carefully neutral, years of practice keeping his expression smooth. But he noticed how Rosa's fingers tightened around her champagne glass, how her shoulders tensed under her expensive shawl. She touched Sterling's arm lightly, as if to redirect him, but he was already launching into another story. And don't get me started on the valet service, Sterling chuckled, raising his glass. Though I suppose we should be grateful they can tell one car from another, most days anyway. The group around him tittered appreciatively, except for Rosa. Her eyes flashed with barely concealed discomfort, though only someone watching closely would notice. She took a small step away from Sterling, creating a slight but deliberate distance between them. Eli shifted his position, moving further into the shadows at the edge of the ballroom. He'd spent years being invisible in rooms like this, watching the wealthy and powerful reveal who they truly were when they thought no one important was looking. Sterling's words were nothing new, just another reminder of the walls that existed in this glittering world, walls built of money and privilege and casual cruelty disguised as humor. The young waiter passed by again, steadier now, offering champagne to the group around Sterling. Some guests waved him away without even looking at him, while others grabbed glasses without a word of thanks. Rosa, though, paused to meet the waiter's eyes as she took a glass, offering a quiet "thank you" that seemed to carry an apology for more than just the champagne. Eli slipped through a side entrance, nodding to the security guard who recognized him from the hospital. The service corridors behind the ballroom were a maze of plain concrete walls and exposed pipes, a stark contrast to the opulence on display in the main hall. Staff members in black uniforms rushed past with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvre. In a quieter corner near the prep area, Eli noticed a young woman in catering attire arranging glasses on a silver tray. Her hands trembled slightly, and she kept rubbing her arms against the chill from a nearby service entrance. The thin polyester uniform offered little protection against the draft. "Ma'am?" Eli approached carefully, not wanting to startle her. "You look cold. Would you like to borrow my coat?" She glanced up, dark eyes wide with surprise. "Oh no, I couldn't." "I insist," Eli said, already shrugging off his warm jacket. "I'm plenty warm, and that door's letting in all kinds of cold air." After a moment's hesitation, she accepted the coat with a grateful smile. "Thank you. I'm Anna." "Eli Carter. I work over at Meridian Hospital." He helped her slip the jacket on. It was much too big, but she immediately stopped shivering. "The hospital? My son Mateo loves watching the helicopters land there." Her face lit up at the mention of her child. "He wants to be a rescue pilot when he grows up." "Smart kid," Eli said, smiling. "How old is he?" 8. "He's actually here tonight. My regular sitter canceled, and my supervisor said he could stay in the break room as long as he's quiet." Anna's expression flickered with worry. "I should check on him soon." A burst of laughter from the ballroom made them both turn. Through the service window, they could see Sterling Wade commanding attention at the center of a group of donors, his voice carrying. "I mean, really, who actually reads those workplace safety guidelines?" Sterling's perfectly white teeth flashed as he gestured with his champagne glass. "My contractors know the deal. You want the job, you work fast. Simple as that." Anna's shoulders tensed as she arranged more glasses on her tray, careful not to meet anyone's eyes. Eli noticed how her hands had started trembling again, despite the warmth of his coat. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded quickly. "I should get back to work. Thank you again for the coat, Mr. Carter." "Just Eli is fine, and keep it as long as you need." As Anna headed toward the ballroom with her tray, a small figure darted past the prep tables. A young boy, in a slightly rumpled Spider-Man t-shirt and dress pants. He moved with purpose, weaving between the busy staff members. "Mateo," Anna called in an urgent whisper. "Come back here." But the boy had already slipped through the service door into the main hall. Eli watched through the window as Mateo made his way directly to Sterling Wade, who was now standing slightly apart from the crowd while checking his phone. Anna rushed forward but froze just inside the doorway, her face pale with fear. Eli stepped closer, ready to help if needed, though he wasn't sure how. The boy tugged on Sterling's expensive tuxedo jacket. Sterling looked down, annoyed at first, then his expression changed to something more complicated when he saw Mateo's face. Mateo stood on his tiptoes, and even through the service window, Eli could hear his clear, innocent whisper, "Mommy says you're my daddy." The champagne glass in Sterling's hand trembled ever so slightly. The background chatter of the gala seemed to dim, though only a few people nearby had heard the whispered words. Anna rushed forward then, her face a mask of terror as she reached for her son. Sterling's expression hardened into something cold and dismissive as he turned away, already signaling to one of his assistants who materialized at his side. Eli watched it all unfold like a slow-motion car crash, knowing there was nothing he could do to stop what was already in motion. Through the window, he saw Rosa standing at the edge of the small scene, her face registering shock as she looked between Sterling, Anna, and the little boy who shared her fiancé's distinctive dimpled chin. The words hung in the air like frost. Sterling Wade's shoulders went rigid, his champagne glass frozen halfway to his lips. For a moment, the bustling backstage area seemed to hold its breath. Mateo looked up at Sterling with innocent brown eyes, still gripping the hem of the expensive tuxedo. Anna's face drained of color as she lurched forward, the borrowed jacket slipping from her shoulders. "I am so sorry, Mr. Wade," she stammered, reaching for Mateo. "He has such an imagination." A man in a dark suit materialized beside Sterling, his movements smooth and practiced. "Let's handle this privately," he said, his voice low but firm. James Morrison, Sterling's personal fixer and head of security, placed a guiding hand on Anna's elbow. "Please," Anna whispered, clutching Mateo to her side. "I didn't mean for him to—" "This way." Morrison's grip tightened slightly as he steered them toward a service exit. "Mr. Wade has a very busy schedule tonight. We'll sort this out properly." Eli took an instinctive step forward, but Morrison's cold stare stopped him. "This doesn't concern you," the fixer said flatly. Mateo twisted in his mother's arms, reaching for Eli's jacket that had fallen to the floor. "Mama, your coat." "Leave it," Morrison commanded. The service door clicked shut behind them, leaving only the distant sounds of the gala filtering through the walls. Sterling straightened his bow tie with practiced fingers, his face a mask of composure. "Unfortunate interruption," he said to no one in particular, then strode back toward the ballroom as if nothing had happened. Eli bent down to retrieve his jacket, his hands clenched around the worn fabric. When he looked up, Rosa stood in the doorway, her elegant gown catching the fluorescent light. Her dark eyes moved from the service exit to Eli's face, and he saw something shift in her expression, recognition perhaps, of another moment when someone needed help. "Did you see?" she asked quietly, moving closer. Eli nodded, his jaw tight. "Yes, ma'am. I saw everything." Rosa glanced over her shoulder, then lowered her voice. "That boy, he looks just like Sterling when he was young. I've seen the photos in his mother's house." "Not our business," Eli said carefully, though his grip on the jacket hadn't loosened. "Maybe it should be." Rosa's fingers worried at her engagement ring. "Morrison will try to make this disappear. He's very good at that." The muffled sound of applause drifted through the walls, Sterling beginning his keynote speech, right on schedule. Rosa's shoulders slumped slightly. "I should be out there," she said, but made no move toward the ballroom. "Yes, ma'am." Eli folded his jacket over his arm. "Would you like me to escort you back?" Rosa shook her head, then reached for her phone. After a moment of typing, she showed him the screen, a photo of Sterling in his early 20s, standing beside his mother's rose garden. The resemblance to Mateo was striking, the same dimpled smile, the same arch of the eyebrows. "I've watched Sterling's security team handle problems before," Rosa said, her voice harder now. "They're efficient, too efficient. That woman, Anna," she looked terrified. "She was just trying to protect her boy," Eli said softly, remembering how fiercely Anna had held Mateo. "Like you protected me that night under the bridge." Rosa's words weren't a question. "When everyone else drove past, you stopped. You helped." Eli shifted uncomfortably. "Just did what needed doing, ma'am." "And now?" Rosa's dark eyes held his. "What needs doing now?" Before Eli could answer, the service door burst open. Morrison strode through, his phone pressed to his ear. "Already handled." "No, sir, they won't be a problem. I've made it very clear." He broke off when he saw Rosa and Eli, his face hardening. "Ms. Navarro, they're waiting for your speech." Rosa straightened, every inch the CEO again. "Of course, I'll be right there." But she didn't move until Morrison had disappeared through the opposite door. The next hour passed in a blur of speeches and polite applause. Eli waited in the parking lot, watching his breath cloud in the cold air. The snow had stopped, leaving everything covered in a pristine white blanket that hid the ice beneath. Finally, the gala guests began filtering out to their waiting cars. Rosa emerged last, her heels clicking on the cleared pavement. She looked drained, the professional mask slipping now that the cameras were gone. "I'd like you to keep driving me," she said without preamble. "Ma'am?" "Not just tonight." Rosa met his gaze steadily. "I need someone I can trust. Someone who sees what needs doing and does it no matter what." Eli thought of Anna's trembling hands, of Mateo's innocent truth-telling, of Morrison's efficient threats. He thought of his daughter Maya, not much older than Mateo, and how she'd taught him that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing were the same. "Yes, ma'am," he said simply. "I can do that." Rosa nodded, relief softening her features. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. Shall we go?" Eli opened the car door, and as Rosa settled into the back seat, he caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window. She was turning her engagement ring around and around on her finger, her eyes fixed on something far beyond the snowy parking lot. Snow crunched beneath their feet as Rosa and Eli walked toward the sedan, their breath visible in the cold night air. The parking lot was nearly empty now, most gala attendees having left during the uncomfortable aftermath of Mateo's whispered revelation. Only a few luxury cars remained, their surfaces dulled by the gathering snow. Rosa hugged herself against the cold, her elegant evening gown offering little protection. Her heels clicked uncertainly on the slick pavement. "I can't just pretend I didn't hear what that little boy said." Eli opened the passenger door for her, his movements deliberate and careful. "No, ma'am. Some things, once heard, can't be unheard." Once inside the car, Rosa pressed her hands against the dashboard, seeking warmth. Eli slid into the driver's seat, brushing snow from his shoulders. The engine hummed to life, and warm air slowly began to fill the space. "Sterling insists it's just a shakedown." Rosa's voice was tight with doubt. "Says Anna is trying to exploit him, that she's done this before with other executives." Eli adjusted the rearview mirror, his expression neutral but his eyes holding a weight of understanding. "That little boy Mateo helped me stack paper cups earlier. Couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Had the same dimple as Mr. Wade when he smiled." Rosa closed her eyes, letting out a shaky breath. "I noticed that too, and his eyes. They're the exact same shade of green as Sterling's." She turned to face Eli. "You gave Anna your coat." "She was shivering," Eli said simply. "Working double shifts, she told me, trying to keep up with Mateo's school supplies and medicine. Boy's got asthma." The heat was finally working now, fogging the windows slightly. Outside, the snow continued to fall in thick flakes, creating a cocoon of white around the car. Rosa twisted her engagement ring, a massive diamond that caught the dim light of the parking lot lamps. "I've known Sterling for 3 years," she said slowly. "We got engaged 6 months ago. He's on the hospital board, handles all our major construction projects." Everything seemed so perfect. Her voice cracked on the last word. Eli kept his hands steady on the wheel, though they hadn't started moving yet. "Sometimes the most beautiful buildings have cracks in their foundations, ma'am." "Please," she said softly, "call me Rosa." She wiped at her eyes carefully, maintaining her composure through years of practice. "I saw how quickly his security team moved. They knew exactly what to do, like they'd done it before, and the way they rushed Anna and Mateo out," she shuddered. "Like they were erasing evidence." Eli finished quietly. Rosa nodded, her jaw set with growing determination. "I need someone I can trust, Mr. Carter, not just tonight but going forward. Someone who knows right from wrong and isn't afraid to stand by it." She looked at him directly. "You saved my life once and asked for nothing in return. You didn't even stay to take credit." "Eli," he corrected gently, "and I did what anyone should have done." "But they didn't, did they?" The dashcam footage showed other cars passing by. "You were the only one who stopped." She straightened in her seat, decision made. "I'd like to hire you as my personal driver. Official position, full benefits, better hours for your daughter. But more than that, I need an ally. Someone who sees what I see and isn't afraid to help me find the truth." Eli was quiet for a long moment, considering. The windshield wipers pushed away the gathering snow in steady sweeps. Finally he spoke. "Truth's a heavy thing, Ms. Rosa, especially when powerful people want it buried. You sure you're ready for what we might find?" "I have to be," she replied firmly. "That little boy deserves better. Anna deserves better. All our workers do." She twisted her ring again, then slowly pulled it off, placing it in her clutch. "I'll face whatever consequences come." Eli nodded, his expression resolute. "Then I'll stand with you, long as you stand by truth." He put the car in drive, headlights cutting through the swirling snow. "Where to first?" "Home," Rosa said, settling back into her seat. "We have work to do tomorrow." The sedan pulled away from the curb, leaving the glittering gala behind as they drove into the heart of the storm. The small Baptist church glowed with morning sunlight filtering through its stained glass windows. Eli sat in his usual pew, Maya beside him in her favorite yellow dress. The familiar scent of old wood and lemon polish filled the air as the congregation swayed to "His Eye is on the Sparrow." Deacon Harold's deep voice carried above the others, strong and sure. Eli smiled, remembering how the old veteran had helped him find his footing when he'd first moved to town with Maya. The deacon caught his eye and gave a knowing wink. Maya nudged her father's arm. "Dad, look who just came in," she whispered. Eli turned toward the entrance. There stood Rosa Navarro, looking distinctly uncomfortable in a simple blue dress. Gone was the CEO's power suit and commanding presence. Here, she seemed smaller, more human. Deacon Harold moved quickly to greet her, his weathered face creasing with a warm smile. "Welcome, Ms. Navarro. Glad you could make it." The deacon's voice boomed softly. He guided her toward Eli's pew. "Eli, make room for our guest." Maya scooted over, patting the space between her and her father. Rosa hesitated before sliding in, her shoulders tense. "I hope this isn't inappropriate," she whispered to Eli. "Deacon Harold called this morning, insisted I come." "Church is for everyone," Eli replied quietly. He handed her a hymnal, pointing to the current page. "We're on verse 3. As the music swelled, Rosa's rigid posture gradually relaxed. Maya's clear voice beside her seemed to give her courage, and by the final chorus, Rosa was humming along softly. After the service, the congregation moved to the fellowship hall for the weekly potluck. The room buzzed with conversation and the clinking of plates. Children darted between tables, decorated with cheerful paper flowers Maya's youth group had made. "The chili's my specialty," Deacon Harold announced, ladling generous portions into bowls. "Secret recipe passed down from my mama." Rosa accepted a bowl, settling at a corner table with Eli and Maya. "I haven't been to church since I was a girl," she admitted. "My abuela would drag me every Sunday." Her eyes grew distant with memory. "Sometimes we need reminding we're not alone," Deacon Harold said, joining them. He studied Rosa's face, especially when facing hard choices. Maya excused herself to help serve, leaving the adults to talk. The conversation flowed easier now, away from the formal hospital halls and gala ballrooms. Rosa spoke of her grandmother's unwavering faith, while Eli shared stories of finding this church family after losing his wife. A shadow fell across their table. Ana Luz stood there, clutching her purse tight against her chest. Her eyes darted nervously toward the doors. "Deacon Harold told me I could find you here," she whispered. "I'm sorry to interrupt your Sunday, but—" Her voice trembled. "Sit," Rosa said gently, pulling out a chair. "Please." Ana perched on the edge of the seat, her back rigid with tension. Eli quietly got up and returned with a bowl of chili and some cornbread. "Eat something," he encouraged. "You're safe here." Ana stared at the food, then at her hands. "Sterling's people came to my apartment last night. They offered money to leave town, to stay quiet." Tears filled her eyes. "But Mateo, he needs to know his father. He asks questions. I can't keep lying." Rosa reached across the table, covering Anna's trembling hands with her own. "We won't let you face this alone." "But I'm undocumented," Anna whispered. "If I fight this, they'll—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Eli's calm voice cut through her fear. "There are people who can help. Legal aid, advocacy groups. Deacon Harold knows good lawyers who work pro bono." "Why would you help me?" Ana asked Rosa. "He's your fiancé." Rosa's face hardened slightly. "Because truth matters more than convenience, and because that little boy deserves better than to be buried under lies and money." Anna's shoulders shook as she finally began to eat, the simple act of sharing a meal seeming to give her strength. Around them, the fellowship hall hummed with life and laughter, creating a bubble of safety in their corner. Deacon Harold appeared again, setting down a fresh basket of cornbread. "Remember what the good book says about justice rolling down like waters?" His deep voice was gentle. "Sometimes it starts with just a few drops of truth. The rest follows in God's time." Maya returned, sensing the gravity of the conversation. She sat quietly beside her father, her young face serious as she listened to the adults talk through possibilities and fears. "The first step," Rosa said, "is documenting everything. Dates, times, any proof of Sterling's involvement with you." "I kept everything," Ana admitted. "Letters, old photos, even the hospital bill from when Mateo was born." She touched her purse, where the evidence lay hidden. "Smart woman." Eli nodded approvingly. "But we need to get those somewhere safe, somewhere they can't disappear." The conversation continued in low voices, plans taking shape over bowls of Deacon Harold's chili. Anna's terror gradually eased as she realized she wasn't alone anymore. There, in the warm fellowship hall, surrounded by the sounds of community and the smell of cornbread, a small flame of hope began to flicker. The evening wrapped around the Carter home like a warm blanket. Maya sat cross-legged on their worn but comfortable couch, her laptop balanced on her knees. The soft glow of the screen illuminated her determined face as she looked up at her father, who was preparing 2 mugs of hot chocolate in their small kitchen. "Dad, I can help," Maya said, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "I'm really good at finding information online. Remember when I tracked down that rare comic book you wanted for your collection?" Eli carried the steaming mugs over, setting one on the coffee table near Maya. "This is different, sweetie. We're talking about digging into someone's private life. Mr. Wade is a powerful man." "That's exactly why we need to help," Maya insisted, taking a careful sip of her hot chocolate. "You always taught me that standing up for what's right isn't just about big gestures. Sometimes it's about doing the quiet work that needs to be done." Eli sank into his favorite armchair, the springs creaking familiarly beneath him. He studied his daughter's face, seeing the same determination that her mother had shown. "What exactly are you thinking?" "Public records are available to anyone," Maya explained, her fingers now moving swiftly across the keyboard. "Sterling Wade is the CEO of a public company. His business travel, speaking engagements, board meetings, they're all documented somewhere." "And how does this help Anna and Matteo?" Maya's eyes sparkled with purpose. "If we can find proof that Sterling was in the same places as Anna during the right times, it could support her story. Plus, there might be payroll records since she worked at Meridian Events." Eli leaned forward, concerned. "Maya, we need to be careful. This isn't like your school research projects." "I know, Dad. I'll only look at public sources, news articles, company press releases, social media posts that are already out there." She paused, looking at him seriously. "And I'll use the library's secure connection, not our home internet." Pride mixed with worry in Eli's chest. His daughter was showing the same sense of justice that had driven him to pull Rosa from that burning car years ago. "Okay," he said finally. "But we do this smart and safe. No hacking, no breaking any rules." Maya nodded eagerly and opened a fresh document. "First, let's make a timeline. Matteo is 8 years old, so we need to look at events from about 9 years ago." For the next hour, father and daughter worked together. Maya searched through archived news articles while Eli jotted down dates and locations in his neat handwriting. They found photographs of Sterling at charity galas, business conferences, and hospital groundbreaking ceremonies. "Look at this," Maya said suddenly, turning her screen toward her father. "There was a series of Meridian fundraising events in Puerto Rico 9 years ago. Sterling was there for 2 weeks, according to these press releases." Eli leaned in closer. And, Maya pulled up another window. "According to these old payroll records from the catering company Anna worked for, she was assigned to those same events. The dates match perfectly." They continued searching, finding more overlapping dates and locations. Maya created a careful spreadsheet, color-coding the matches. As the evidence mounted, Eli felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction at finding the truth. Sadness for little Matteo, who had lived 8 years without his father's acknowledgement. "Dad, there's more," Maya said softly. She pulled up a photo from one of the Puerto Rico events. In it, Sterling stood at a podium, but in the background, barely visible among the serving staff, was a younger Anna. The way Sterling's eyes slid toward her in the photograph spoke volumes. Eli reached out and squeezed his daughter's shoulder. "Good work, baby girl. But remember, this information isn't for us to spread around. We need to give it to Rosa and Anna's lawyer, let them handle it properly." Maya nodded, saving everything to a secure folder. "I get it, Dad. This isn't about embarrassing anyone. It's about doing what's right for Matteo." The clock on the wall chimed 9 times. Eli stood, stretching his tired muscles. "Time for bed, detective. You've got school tomorrow." As Maya packed up her laptop, she looked at her father with concern. "Will you be okay? I know this whole situation is putting you in a tough spot at work." Eli smiled, touched by her worry. "Don't you concern yourself with that. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't easy, but that doesn't make it any less right." Maya hugged him tightly. "I'm proud of you, Dad, for helping Ms. Navarro now and for saving Ms. Rosa back then. You're kind of like a superhero, you know?" Eli chuckled, patting her back. "No cape, though. Just a mop and a steady heart." He pulled back, looking at her seriously. "Everything we found tonight stays between us for now, okay?" "Promise," Maya said, gathering her evidence folder. "I'll get this to Ms. Rosa tomorrow after school. She can pass it to the lawyer." The quiet weight of their discovery settled over the room. Outside, a car passed slowly through their neighborhood, its headlights briefly illuminating the living room walls. Inside, father and daughter stood in the growing darkness, united in their quest for truth, understanding that sometimes justice starts with small acts of courage and careful research. Maya turned off her laptop, the screen's glow fading to black. The payroll records, travel dates, and that telling photograph were now safely documented, waiting to help right a wrong that had gone on far too long. The conference room on Meridian's third floor felt different today. Instead of the usual executive meetings with their polished presentations and corporate jargon, the space now held 24 frontline workers. Rosa had arranged the chairs in a circle, deliberately breaking from the typical boardroom layout. Afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, as nurses, custodians, cafeteria workers, and maintenance staff filtered in. Some looked nervous, others determined. Rosa noticed how they sat close together, drawing strength from each other's presence. "Thank you all for coming," Rosa began, her voice warm and sincere. She'd left her usual blazer behind, wearing a simple blue sweater instead. "This isn't a formal meeting. I want to hear your stories, the real ones, not the sanitized versions that usually make it up to administration." A heavy silence filled the room. Rosa could see the hesitation in their eyes, the fear of speaking up. Then Maria, a veteran nurse of 15 years, cleared her throat. "Miss Navarro, we've had our hours cut without notice," Maria said, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Sometimes we show up for our shift only to be sent home, but we've already paid for childcare, spent money on gas to get here." Others began nodding, and suddenly the dam broke. "They changed our schedule tracking system," James from maintenance added. "Hours just disappear sometimes. When we complain, they say it's a computer error, but it never seems to get fixed." Rosa pulled out a small notebook, her pen moving quickly across the page. "How long has this been happening?" "Since Sterling Enterprises took over management of staff scheduling," answered Carmen from housekeeping. 6 months ago." She twisted her cleaning rag between weathered hands. "My daughter's quinceañera is coming up. I've been saving every extra penny, but with these missing hours." The stories continued to pour out. A cafeteria worker described being called racial slurs by a supervisor who'd been brought in by Sterling's team. An orderly explained how his overtime hours were regularly lost in the system. A nurse assistant revealed she'd been threatened with deportation when she tried to report unsafe working conditions. Rosa's hand shook slightly as she wrote, but her voice remained steady. "Please, keep going. I need to hear everything." An elderly janitor named George spoke up, his voice quiet but clear. "My grandson Marcus works here too, in maintenance. Last week they had him working up on the roof without proper safety equipment. When he mentioned OSHA regulations, his supervisor said he could either do the job or find another one." The room grew tense as more workers shared similar experiences. Tales of intimidation, of missing wages, of dignity stripped away bit by bit. Rosa noticed how they used phrases like, "after the takeover," and "since Sterling came in," marking time by when her fiancé's company had begun managing various hospital operations. "Sometimes I can't sleep at night," admitted Sarah, a night shift nurse. "I keep checking my bank account, trying to figure out how to make up for the missing hours. My kid needs new glasses, but—" She trailed off, blinking back tears. Rosa set down her pen and looked around the circle. These weren't just employees sharing complaints. These were people who dedicated their lives to caring for others, now being treated as disposable. She saw the same faces she passed in the halls every day, the ones who kept Meridian running, who showed up no matter what. "I want you to know something," Rosa said, her voice firm. "What's happening here isn't just wrong, it's illegal. Wage theft is a crime. Discrimination is a crime. Safety violations are crimes." She stood up, walking to the center of the circle. "And I refuse to let it continue." She pulled a large whiteboard forward, uncapping a marker. "We're going to draft something together right now, a workers' bill of rights for Meridian. I want every single one of you to contribute." For the next hour, they built it together. Point by point, right by right. Fair wages paid in full. Safe working conditions. Protection from discrimination and harassment. Clear grievance procedures. Respect for family obligations. Training opportunities. Healthcare coverage that actually covered their needs. Rosa wrote each item in bold letters, her handwriting strong and clear. The room's energy had shifted from despair to determination. These weren't just words on a board, they were declarations of human dignity. "This is just the beginning," Rosa announced, capping the marker. "I'm going to make this official hospital policy. We'll create proper reporting systems, with real oversight. No more disappearing complaints, no more ignored violations." She turned to face the group, her expression resolute. "I know you took a risk coming here today. I know how hard it was to speak up. But change starts with truth. And you've shown incredible courage in sharing yours." The workers began standing up, some wiping tears, others straightening their uniforms with newfound pride. They had been heard. They had been believed. Most importantly, they had been promised action. Unknown to those inside, a shadow darkened the small window in the conference room door. Sterling Wade stood in the hallway, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the institutional lighting. His eyes narrowed as he watched Rosa shake hands with each worker, saw the determined set of her shoulders, the way she looked each person in the eye with respect and understanding. The workers' Bill of Rights stood bold and clear on the whiteboard behind her, each point a direct challenge to his company's practices, each word a testament to what he considered a betrayal. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk as Eli held the door of Jerry's ice cream parlor open. Maya guided Mateo inside while the little bell above the door chimed cheerfully. The shop's walls were painted a warm yellow, and the air smelled sweet with freshly baked waffle cones. "Can I get chocolate?" Mateo asked, pressing his hands against the glass display case. His eyes widened at the rows of colorful ice cream flavors. "Of course, buddy." Eli smiled down at him. "Whatever flavor you want." Maya knelt beside Mateo, pointing out different options. "Look, they even have rainbow sprinkles. Those are my favorite." Jerry himself stood behind the counter, his white apron spotless and his gray mustache neatly trimmed. "Well, what'll it be for this young man?" Mateo bounced on his toes. "Double chocolate, please, with extra sprinkles." "Make that 2, Maya added with a grin. "And Dad, let me guess, vanilla?" Eli chuckled. "You know me too well, baby girl." They settled into a bright red booth by the window. Mateo sat next to Maya, his legs swinging beneath the table as he dug into his ice cream. Chocolate already dotted his chin. "Slow down there, champion," Eli said, handing him a napkin. "The ice cream's not going anywhere." Mateo looked up, flashing a bright smile that made his cheek dimple. Maya froze mid-bite, her spoon hovering in the air. She'd seen that exact same dimple just yesterday, on Sterling Wade's face during his TV interview about hospital funding. Her eyes met her father's across the table. He gave a slight nod, showing he'd noticed it too. It was one more piece of evidence, like the timeline Maya had pieced together from old social media posts and Sterling's travel schedule. "Mr. Eli?" Mateo asked, oblivious to their silent exchange. "How come you work at night sometimes?" "Well," Eli wiped his mouth with a napkin, "some people need the hospital at night just as much as during the day. Someone's got to keep it clean and safe for them." "Like a superhero," Mateo exclaimed. "Mommy says you help people." Maya watched her father's expression soften. "Your mommy helps people too, Mateo. She works very hard to take care of you." "I know." Mateo's voice grew quieter. "Sometimes she cries when she thinks I'm sleeping." The joy of their ice cream outing dimmed slightly. Maya reached over and squeezed Mateo's small hand. "Hey," she said brightly, "want to see a cool trick?" She demonstrated how to balance a spoon on her nose, making Mateo giggle. The bell above the door chimed again. Anna walked in, still wearing her housekeeping uniform from her shift at the Sterling Hotel. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but she smiled when she saw Mateo. "Mommy!" He jumped up and ran to hug her. "Look, they gave me extra sprinkles." "I see that, mi amor." Anna smoothed his hair. "Did you say thank you to Mr. Eli?" "Thank you," Mateo chirped, his dimple appearing again as he smiled. Anna noticed Maya studying her son's face. Understanding passed between them, the same knowing look shared by people who carried a difficult truth. "Would you like some ice cream, Anna?" Eli offered, starting to stand. She shook her head. No, Gracias. We should go. I have another shift soon. Mommy, can't we stay? Mateo pleaded. Maya was teaching me spoon tricks. Anna's hand trembled slightly as she took Mateo's sticky fingers in hers. She looked at Eli and Maya, then down at her son, really looked at him, seeing all the features that matched his father's. No more hiding, she whispered, clutching Mateo's hand tighter. I am ready to tell the truth. Rosa's corner office felt warmer than usual on this spring morning. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching dust motes that danced in the air. The usual corporate sterility was softened by a collection of handmade cards from Meridian's senior residents propped on her desk, their cheerful messages and wobbly artwork bringing color to the space. Ana Luz Reyes sat perched on the edge of a leather chair, her work uniform freshly pressed despite the early hour. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white with tension. Beside her, Mateo swung his legs, absorbed in a superhero comic book Eli had given him. The seniors wanted to help, Rosa explained gently, spreading several papers across her desk. They organized a relief fund specifically for staff members facing family challenges. She gestured to a document bearing the official hospital letterhead. It will cover all costs associated with the DNA testing, Anna, completely confidential. Anna's eyes welled with tears. The abuelos did this? For me? Mrs. Peterson was quite passionate about it, Eli added from where he stood near the window. Said something about young folks needing old folks to stand up for what's right. His warm smile brought a touch of ease to Anna's rigid posture. Rosa leaned forward, her voice soft but steady. You don't have to do this, Anna. But if you want to proceed, we have everything in place. The lab is independent, highly respected, and, she emphasized each word, completely separate from Sterling's influence. Anna looked down at Mateo, who was tracing the outline of his favorite hero with one small finger. Her voice trembled. Will it hurt him? Not at all, Eli assured her. Just a simple cheek swab, like brushing teeth, but with a special cotton stick. And you'll stay? Anna asked, glancing between Eli and Rosa. Both of you? We're not going anywhere, Rosa promised, standing up and smoothing her blazer. The nurse is ready whenever you are. Anna drew a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Mijo, she touched Mateo's arm gently. Remember how we talked about helping the doctors understand our family better? Mateo looked up from his comic book, his expression serious. Like when they tested my blood sugar at school? Similar, but even easier, Eli explained, kneeling to meet the boy's eye level. No needles this time, superhero. Promise. A knock at the door announced the arrival of Nurse Chen, her kind face familiar to all of them from the pediatric ward. She carried a small medical kit and wore cartoon characters on her scrub top. Hello, Mateo, she smiled brightly. Your mom tells me you're being very brave today. Mateo sat up straighter, puffing out his chest just a bit. Like Captain America? Exactly like Captain America, Nurse Chen agreed, pulling up a rolling stool beside him. She opened her kit with practiced efficiency. Would you like to see what we're going to do? Anna watched intently as Nurse Chen demonstrated the swab on herself first, showing how it was just like a soft cotton brush. Her hands shook slightly as she signed the consent forms Rosa provided, but her signature was clear and determined. Mama? Mateo's voice was small. Are you scared? Anna blinked rapidly, forcing a smile. No, mi amor. Sometimes, grown-ups just need to be brave, too. She reached for his hand, and he squeezed back with the unconditional trust only children possess. Eli moved closer, his steady presence like an anchor in the room. You know what my daughter Maya says about being brave? He asked Mateo. She says it's okay to be a little scared and still do the right thing. That's what makes real heroes. Rosa watched the scene unfold, noting how Eli's calm words seemed to settle both mother and child. She'd seen him do this countless times now, bring peace to tense moments with his gentle wisdom. It was a gift that no fancy degree could teach. Nurse Chen prepared the swab while explaining each step. Open wide like you're at the dentist, she instructed cheerfully. This won't take but a moment. Matteo complied, giggling a little as the cotton swab tickled his inner cheek. That's all? He asked when it was done, sounding almost disappointed. That's all, Nurse Chen confirmed, carefully sealing the sample. You did great. Anna had been holding her breath without realizing it. She let it out slowly, her shoulders dropping as the tension began to release. Tears spilled over despite her best efforts to contain them. Eli pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket. He'd started carrying one after that night under the bridge with Rosa and offered it to Anna. You did great too, he said softly. And you're not alone in this. Not anymore. Rosa stepped forward, adding her own reassurance. The results will come directly to my office, sealed. Only you will decide what happens next, Anna. You have my word. Anna dabbed at her eyes with Eli's handkerchief, looking around the room at these people who had become so much more than colleagues or supervisors. Gracias, she whispered. I never thought. I never believed anyone would. Help? Eli finished for her. That's what community does, Anna. We hold each other up. Matteo had returned to his comic book, seemingly unaware of the weight of the moment. But he looked up suddenly, fixing his mother with those familiar dimpled cheeks that had started this whole journey. Can we get ice cream again, like with Maya? A wet laugh escaped Anna. Maybe later, mi amor. She smoothed his hair, her touch lingering as if to reassure herself he was real, he was safe, he was loved. Nurse Chen finished labeling everything and packed up her kit. The lab will process this right away, she explained. Priority handling, as requested. Rosa nodded. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. As the nurse left, Anna stood, still clutching Eli's handkerchief. I should get back to work, she said. Mrs. Wilson in 304 will be wanting her morning tea. Take the morning off, Rosa insisted. Paid time. You've done something incredibly brave today, Anna. Rest a little. Eli placed a gentle hand on Anna's shoulder. Remember what I said. You're not alone anymore. Whatever the results show, whatever comes next, you've got people in your corner now. The Meridian Hospital atrium soared 5 stories high, its glass ceiling letting in streams of afternoon sunlight. Paper lanterns in soft whites and blues hung in graceful swoops between the indoor trees, their gentle glow reflecting off the polished marble floors. The space hummed with anticipation as reporters settled into their chairs, adjusting microphones and checking cameras. Rosa stood at the podium, her navy blazer crisp and professional, though her fingers trembled slightly as she arranged her notes. Behind her, Anna sat quietly with Matteo in his Sunday best, the boy's patent leather shoes gleaming. Eli stood to the side, his usual janitor's uniform replaced with a pressed white shirt and tie that Maya had helped him pick out. Thank you all for coming today, Rosa began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Meridian Hospital has always stood for truth, dignity, and care for all members of our community. Today, we honor those values by addressing recent events with complete transparency. She paused, taking a deep breath. In the front row, Sterling Wade sat with his lawyers, his usual smooth confidence replaced by a tight-lipped scowl. Martha Keene, the senior board member, watched from her seat with keen interest, her wire-rimmed glasses catching the light. 3 weeks ago, a brave young boy spoke his truth, Rosa continued. That truth led to questions that deserved answers. With the full consent of Ana Luz Reyes and her son Matteo, we conducted DNA testing through an independent laboratory, funded by our staff relief program. A ripple of whispers moved through the crowd. Eli noticed several of the hospital's housekeeping staff gathering at the back of the atrium, still in their uniforms, standing shoulder to shoulder in silent support. The results confirm that Sterling Wade is Matteo's biological father. Rosa's words rang clear in the hushed space. Miss Reyes has shown remarkable courage in coming forward, despite facing enormous pressure to remain silent. Sterling's lawyer started to stand, but Sterling yanked him back down, his face flushed red with anger and embarrassment. As CEO of Meridian Hospital, I am announcing several immediate actions, Rosa pressed on. First, We are establishing a comprehensive parental support program for all employees, regardless of position. Second, we are launching an independent review of all wage and working condition complaints across Sterling development projects. She straightened her shoulders, her voice growing stronger. And finally, on a personal note, I am ending my engagement to Sterling Wade. I cannot in good conscience marry someone whose actions so deeply contradict the values of compassion and integrity that Meridian stands for. A burst of camera flashes filled the atrium. In the back, Deacon Harold nodded slowly, pride evident in his weathered face. Maya, standing beside him, squeezed his hand. Ms. Reyes and Mateo deserve more than silence and shadows. Rosa continued. Every worker in this hospital deserves dignity and respect. Every parent deserves support. Every child deserves to know their truth. The senior residents who had insisted on attending despite the crowd began to applaud. Soon others joined in, the sound swelling through the atrium like a wave. Rosa raised her hand for quiet. I'd like to acknowledge someone else who embodies the spirit of Meridian. Elijah Carter has served this hospital for years, often unnoticed, but always essential. His quiet courage and unwavering integrity have been a guiding light through these challenging weeks. Eli shifted uncomfortably as attention turned his way, but Rosa's warm smile steadied him. Therefore, I am pleased to announce the creation of a new position, Facilities and Community Care Liaison. Mr. Pleased to announce the creation of a new position. Carter will help bridge the gap between administration and staff, ensuring every voice is heard and every concern addressed. His salary and benefits will reflect the vital importance of this role. More applause erupted, louder this time. The housekeeping staff in the back whooped and cheered. Maya covered her mouth with both hands, tears sparkling in her eyes. Questions? Rosa asked, turning to face the press corps. Hands shot up across the room. But before anyone could speak, little Mateo slipped from his chair and ran to the podium. He tugged on Rosa's blazer, and she knelt down to his level. Thank you for helping my mommy, he said clearly into the microphone, his gap-toothed smile lighting up the giant screens behind them. The atrium erupted in applause and cheers. Even Martha Keene dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. The lanterns swayed gently overhead, their soft light seeming to grow brighter with each passing moment. Eli felt joy surge through his chest as he watched Rosa hug Mateo, then reach out to include Ana in the embrace. After years of mopping floors in shadows, of being overlooked and undervalued, he felt seen. Really seen. The promotion wasn't just about him, it was about every worker who had ever swallowed their pride, who had ever stayed quiet in the face of injustice. The senior residents started singing Amazing Grace, their wavering voices filling the atrium with unexpected harmony. Others joined in, the song rising up toward the glass ceiling where the lanterns glowed like stars. In that moment, under the gentle light of 100 paper lanterns, something shifted in Meridian Hospital. Truth had won out over power. Compassion had defeated greed. And a simple janitor's steady faith in doing what was right had helped make it all possible. The singing continued as Rosa stepped away from the podium, making her way through the crowd to where Eli stood. She extended her hand, her eyes bright with emotion. "Ready to get to work, Mr. Liaison?" she asked, her smile genuine and warm. "Yes, ma'am," Eli replied, taking her hand as joy continued to flood through the sunlit atrium. "More than ready." The glow of Maya's laptop screen cast harsh shadows across her face as she sat cross-legged on their living room couch. Outside, the winter wind whistled through bare branches, and inside, the radiator clanked steadily. She'd been searching news coverage of the press conference when a link caught her eye. "Dad?" Her voice cracked. "You need to see this." Eli looked up from the kitchen where he was washing dishes, his hands still covered in soap suds. Something in Maya's tone made him dry his hands quickly and hurry over. The website she'd found was stark black and red, with bold text screaming, "Violent X. Con infiltrates Meridian Hospital." His stomach dropped as he read further. There was his old mugshot from 15 years ago, when he'd been arrested at a peaceful protest against police brutality. He'd been 25 then, angry, and grieving his wife's death. The charges had been dropped and the record sealed, but here it was, twisted into something ugly. "They're calling you dangerous?" Maya whispered, scrolling through comments that made her hand shake. "They're saying you threatened Sterling Wade, that you coerced Ms. Navarro into the DNA test." Eli sank onto the couch beside his daughter, feeling the weight of every one of his 55 years. "Baby girl, you know none of that's true." "Of course, I know." Maya's voice rose sharply. "But look at how many people are sharing this. And the comments they're talking about calling the hospital board, demanding you be fired." Eli rubbed his face with both hands. The site had photos of him from today's press conference, annotated with red circles and arrows like evidence in a crime scene. His military service was mocked as suspicious. His job as a janitor painted as a cover for something sinister. "We have to call Ms. Navarro," Maya said, already reaching for her phone. "She needs to know." "No." Eli placed his hand over hers. "Not tonight. She's been through enough today and this." He gestured at the screen. "This is aimed at me, not her." Maya's phone buzzed with incoming texts. "It's all over social media now. Everyone at school is talking about it." She looked up at her father, eyes bright with unshed tears. "What are we going to do?" Eli pulled her close, letting her rest her head on his shoulder like she used to do when she was small. "We're going to tell the truth, just like always." But his voice wasn't as steady as he wanted it to be. The night crept by slowly. Neither of them slept much. Maya kept checking the website, watching the view counter climb higher and higher. Eli sat in his favorite armchair by the window, holding his old dog tags, and thinking about choices, the one he'd made at that protest, the one he'd made under Harrington Bridge, the one he'd made to help Anna and Mateo. Dawn brought no relief. Eli called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years, not ready to face the whispers and stares he knew would be waiting. Maya insisted on going to school. "I'm not hiding, Dad," but her brave face couldn't quite hide her worry. At 8:15 a.m., Eli's phone exploded with calls and texts. The first was from Officer Henson. "Turn on the news now." With trembling fingers, Eli pulled up the local news live stream on his tablet. The scene made his blood run cold. Outside Mateo's elementary school, 2 black ICE vehicles blocked the drop-off lane. Parents stood frozen on the sidewalk, some filming with their phones, others covering their children's eyes. The camera zoomed in on Anna being led out in handcuffs, her face a mask of terror and shame. Behind her, 2 officers escorted Mateo, the boy's Spider-Man backpack, a bright spot of childhood innocence in the grim scene. He wasn't crying, he seemed too shocked for tears, but his eyes darted everywhere, searching the crowd. "Mommy?" Mateo's voice carried clearly through the newsfeed. "Mommy? Where are we going?" Anna tried to turn toward her son, but the officers kept her moving. "It's okay, mi amor. Be brave for Mommy. Be brave." The newsfeed cut away to the anchor, but Eli had already grabbed his keys. His phone rang again, Rosa this time. "I'm already calling our lawyers," she said without preamble, her voice tight with fury. "This is retaliation, plain and simple. Sterling must have—" "Save it for later," Eli cut in, already backing his car out of the driveway. "Just tell me where they're taking them." The ICE processing center was a low, gray building on the outskirts of town, surrounded by chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Eli parked across the street, his hands clenched on the steering wheel. He couldn't go in his presence, would only make things worse now that the smear campaign had painted him as dangerous, but he couldn't leave either. His phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "In class, but watching news. Is it true about Mateo? Dad, we have to help them." Another text came through, this one from Deacon Harold. "Calling every contact I have. Hold fast, brother. Truth will prevail." Eli stared at the processing center's entrance, where Anna and Mateo had disappeared 15 minutes ago. The morning sun did nothing to warm the scene. Parents from the school were starting to arrive, clustering on the sidewalk with signs hastily made from notebook paper and cardboard. "Free Anna, Mateo, and children don't belong in cages, and Meridian stands with Anna." A news van pulled up, then another. Eli slumped lower in his seat, knowing his presence would only feed the growing storm. His phone kept buzzing Rosa, with updates from the lawyers, Officer Henson offering to run interference at the hospital, Maya asking if she should leave school early. Through the chain-link fence, Eli caught a glimpse of Mateo in a window, his small face pressed against the glass. The boy's hands were splayed on the pane, and even from this distance, Eli could see his shoulders shaking with sobs. The sight cut through Eli like a knife. He thought of Maya at that age, how he'd promised her mother he'd always keep her safe. He thought of Anna, who'd only wanted to protect her son and give him a better life. He thought of all the times he'd stayed quiet, kept his head down, played it safe. His phone buzzed one more time. A text from Rosa, "Don't give up, we're not done fighting." Outside the processing center, the crowd of supporters had grown. They were singing now, soft and steady. "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound." Eli bowed his head, his dog tags cool against his chest, and whispered a prayer for strength. The morning sun climbed higher, casting harsh shadows through the razor wire, while inside the gray building a little boy cried for his mother, and outside, a community began to gather its forces for the fight ahead. Rosa sat at her mahogany desk, staring at the framed photos of Meridian's first graduating class of nurses from 1925. The morning sun filtered through her office windows, but it brought no warmth. Her phone buzzed. Board emergency meeting flashed across the screen. With steady hands that betrayed none of her inner turmoil, she answered. "Ms. Navarro." Martha Keene's usually warm voice was clipped and formal. "The board has convened an emergency session this morning." Rosa's throat tightened. "I see. In light of recent events and your advocacy activities, the board has voted to suspend you from your duties, effective immediately. Pending review." The words hit like physical blows. Rosa's fingers curled around her pen, knuckles white. On what grounds? Improper activism, misuse of hospital resources, creating potential liability issues. Martha paused. "I'm sorry, Rosa. Security will escort you out in 30 minutes. The line went dead. Rosa sat perfectly still, her reflection in the window showing a woman she barely recognized, perfectly styled hair, crisp blazer, but eyes that held a storm of emotion. She began methodically gathering her personal items. The ceramic mug Maya had painted for her, the small silver cross her grandmother had given her. Each item went into a cardboard box with precise movements that helped hold back the tears threatening to fall. A soft knock at her door made her look up. Eli stood there, his usually steady expression clouded with concern. "Miss Navarro? I just heard." "Please," she said softly. "It's Rosa, especially now." He stepped inside, closing the door. "This isn't right. After everything you've done for this place." "They're scared," Rosa said, placing her awards in the box. "Sterling has powerful friends. And I." She swallowed hard. "I threatened the status quo." Eli moved to help her pack, handling each item with care. "The truth shouldn't be a threat." "But it is," Rosa's voice caught. "To people who profit from lies, the truth is terrifying." They worked in silence for a few minutes, the weight of consequences settling around them. Through the window, they could see Anna's empty cart in the courtyard. She should have been serving coffee to the morning shift. Instead, she and Mateo were in detention, scared, and alone. "I keep thinking about what you said that night under the bridge," Rosa murmured, taking down her degrees. "About why you left after pulling me out. You knew how the system would see you, a black man at a crash scene. And you were right." She turned to face him. "Just like you were right to be careful all these years. Look what they're doing to you now, digging up an old protest arrest." Eli's shoulders tensed. Maya's worried. She shouldn't have to deal with this kind of pressure at 17. None of us should. Rosa placed her last photo in the box, a group shot of the hospital staff from last Christmas. But here we are. Security appeared at her door right on schedule. 2 guards, she'd known for years now, stood awkwardly, unable to meet her eyes. "Miss Navarro, We need to escort you out now. Rosa lifted her chin. Of course. She picked up her box, but Eli gently took it from her. Let me help, he said quietly. They walked through the halls together, past shocked faces and whispered conversations. Staff members who'd celebrated with them yesterday now turned away, afraid to be associated with her fall from grace. The click of Rosa's heels on the tile floor echoed like judgment. At the main entrance, Eli set down her box. What will you do now? Rosa looked at the hospital she'd given 15 years of her life to. I need some time to think. To pray. She managed a small smile. The chapel's still open to the public, right? Always. She touched his arm briefly. Thank you, Eli. For everything. The guards waited, as Rosa collected her box and walked to her car. They watched until she drove away, then turned to Eli. Mr. Carter? Administration wants to see you. But Eli had already started walking toward the chapel, his steps heavy with decision. Inside, the small space was cool and dim, scented with beeswax candles. Rosa knelt in the front pew, her box beside her, her head bowed. Eli sat in the back, watching as she lit a single candle. Its flame flickered, casting dancing shadows on the wall. In its light he thought about Maya's worried face this morning, about the cruel comments already appearing online about his daughter. He thought about his promotion, now surely vanished like smoke. The weight of protecting Maya pressed down on his shoulders. Maybe it would be better to quit now, before they could fire him. Find work somewhere quieter, safer. Somewhere Maya wouldn't have to face whispers and stares. But as he watched Rosa's solitary vigil, he remembered another night of hard choices. The crash, the flames, the decision to help despite the risk. Sometimes doing right meant walking toward the fire, not away from it. Rosa's candle burned steady and bright in the chapel's silence, while Eli sat in the shadows, wrestling with the choice between safety and truth. The pre-dawn air bit cold and sharp as Eli Carter stood at the entrance of First Grace Baptist Church. His breath formed clouds in the gray light while he watched the sun struggle to break through heavy winter clouds. The church's old brick walls had witnessed countless prayers, but today they seemed to hold more weight than usual. Deacon Harold's familiar heavy footsteps echoed behind him. The older man's cane tapped a steady rhythm on the concrete, matching the beating of Eli's troubled heart. Knew I'd find you here, son. The deacon's voice carried its usual warmth, though tinged with concern. Maya called. Said you were talking about quitting. Eli's shoulders slumped. I can't put her at risk, Harold. They're digging up my past, twisting everything. That protest arrest from 20 years ago? They're making me sound like some kind of violent criminal. Mm-hmm. Harold moved to stand beside him, both men now facing east, as pink began to streak the sky. And you think running away fixes that? It's not just me anymore. They went after Anna and Mateo. What if Maya's next? What if... Eli's voice cracked. I'm just a janitor. Who am I to stand up against someone like Sterling Wade? Harold's deep laugh rumbled through the morning quiet. Just a janitor? Boy, you were never just anything. He turned to face Eli fully. Remember what you told me about that night? About Rosa's accident? Eli closed his eyes, the memories washing over him. The screech of metal, the smell of gasoline, the weight of Rosa's unconscious body as he pulled her free. I did what anyone would have done. No. Harold's voice grew firm. You did what you were called to do. When that car was about to blow, most folks would have run the other way. But you? You ran toward the fire. Saved that woman's life. The morning air seemed to grow warmer as the sun finally broke through, casting long shadows across the church steps. Eli remembered the heat of the flames, the prayer he'd whispered as he dragged Rose to safety. You saved a life once by running toward the fire, Harold continued, placing a weathered hand on Eli's shoulder. Don't turn away now. Eli's chest tightened with emotion. But Maya is stronger than you think. Harold smiled. That girl's got your heart, and twice your spirit. She's not afraid. Why are you?" They stood in silence for a moment, watching the neighborhood come alive. A newspaper delivery van rattled past. Mrs. Johnson from 3 doors down walked her ancient poodle. Normal life continuing, while Eli's world seemed to teeter on the edge. "I promised, Sarah," Eli whispered, thinking of his late wife. "Promised I'd keep our baby girl safe." "And you have," Harold's voice softened. "But the best way to keep her safe now is to show her that standing up for truth matters, that justice matters, that doing right matters, even when it costs you something." Eli turned these words over in his mind, remembering Sarah's favorite scripture about being strong and courageous. The morning light caught the silver cross above the church door, making it gleam. "Besides," Harold added with a hint of mischief, "you've got more allies than you know. Officer Henson's been making calls, Martha Keene's been asking questions, and that Rosa? She didn't back down even when they suspended her." A car door slammed nearby, making both men turn. Maya came running up the church steps, her braids flying, clutching her laptop bag. Her face was flushed with excitement. "Dad!" she called out, barely catching her breath. "Officer Henson and I found something. The old dashcam footage from the night of Rosa's accident? It's not gone. It was just misfiled." Eli's heart skipped a beat as Harold's words about allies and courage echoed in his mind. The morning sun had fully risen now, painting the world in shades of possibility. Maya's hands trembled as she connected her laptop to the TV in their modest living room. Eli sat on the worn leather couch, his fingers laced together, while Officer Henson stood by the window, his police uniform still crisp despite the early hour. Rosa perched on the edge of an armchair, her usual professional composure showing cracks of exhaustion and hope. "It was misfiled," Officer Henson explained, his voice steady. "Tagged under traffic incidents instead of accidents with injuries. Took some digging, but Maya here wouldn't give up." Maya clicked play, and the grainy dashcam footage filled the screen. The timestamp showed 11:42 p.m., that fateful night 3 years ago. The old Harrington Bridge loomed in the background, its steel beams ghostly in the darkness. A silver vintage sedan, Sterling's prized collector's car, appeared in frame, moving too fast for the icy conditions. The car swerved sharply, and behind it, Rosa's smaller vehicle spun out of control, crashing into the bridge's support. The silver sedan never slowed, disappearing into the night. Rosa's breath caught. She gripped the armrest, her knuckles white. The footage continued, showing a figure in dark maintenance clothes running toward the smoking wreck. It was Eli, younger but unmistakable, his movements urgent but controlled. "That's my old army training kicking in," Eli said softly, watching himself on screen. "Assess, approach, assist." They watched as past Eli worked to free Rosa from the crumpled car. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking her neck for injury before carefully extracting her. The smoke grew thicker and flames began licking at the engine block. "4 counts in, 6 counts out," Maya whispered, recognizing her father's calm crisis voice as he helped the semi-conscious Rosa away from the vehicle. Moments later, the car erupted in flames. The footage showed Eli staying with Rosa until the first responders' lights appeared in the distance. Then he melted away into the shadows, leaving before questions could be asked. "Why didn't you stay?" Rosa asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Eli's smile was sad but understanding. Black man, expensive car, injured wealthy woman. Sometimes the hero's story doesn't play out so well in real life. "I knew you were in good hands with the paramedics." Officer Henson cleared his throat. "There's more." He pulled out a manila envelope. "After Maya found this footage, I did some deeper digging. Found these in the archived evidence boxes. Inside were photographs of tire tracks, paint chips, and detailed notes about the silver sedan. But most damning was a preliminary report identifying Sterling Wade's vehicle, along with a handwritten note to hold for further review signed by Martha Keene. "We need to show this to Martha," Rosa said, standing up. Her CEO authority was returning to her voice. Right now." 20 minutes later, they sat in Martha Keene's elegant home office. Morning light streamed through tall windows, highlighting the board chair's perfectly coiffed silver hair. She watched the footage in silence, her usual Ice Queen composure cracking as the scenes played out. When it finished, Martha removed her reading glasses and placed them carefully on her desk. The silence stretched taut as a wire. "I was told to bury it," she finally said, each word measured and heavy with long-carried guilt. Sterling's father was still alive then, still chairman of the board. He said it would destroy both our institutions if it came out, his son's reputation, the hospital's donations. She trailed off, looking at her hands. "I convinced myself it was for the greater good." Rosa leaned forward. "And now?" Martha's eyes moved from the frozen image on her laptop to Eli, then back to Rosa. Something shifted in her expression, the weight of years of compromise finally becoming too heavy to bear. "Now," she said softly, "I think it's time to stop burying the truth." The Meridian boardroom felt smaller than usual, its mahogany walls closing in as board members filed in for the emergency session. Morning light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the polished table. Martha Keene sat at the head, her silver hair pulled back severely, hands folded like a judge ready to pass sentence. Sterling Wade lounged in his chair, expensive suit wrinkled from a sleepless night, his trademark smile nowhere to be seen. His lawyer, Davidson, whispered urgently in his ear, while his fixer, Thompson, paced near the door. The other board members murmured among themselves, shooting worried glances at the laptop Rosa had placed at the center of the table. "Let's begin," Martha announced, her voice carrying the weight of authority she'd wielded for decades. "Ms. Navarro has requested this emergency session to present new evidence regarding several matters of concern." Rosa stood, smoothing her navy blazer. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed her exhaustion, but her spine was straight as steel. "Thank you, Madam Chair. What you're about to see is dashcam footage from the night of my accident 3 years ago. Officer Henson discovered it in the police archives yesterday." Sterling's chair creaked as he leaned forward. "This is ridiculous. Ancient history has nothing to do with—" "Mr. Wade," Martha cut in, "you will have your turn to speak." Rosa pressed play. The footage flickered to life on the large screen mounted on the wall. Through the grainy night vision, they watched a vintage sedan, Sterling's prized collector's car, swerve erratically on the bridge. The timestamp matched the exact minute of Rosa's accident. Several board members gasped as the sedan clipped Rosa's car, sending it spinning toward the guardrail. The sedan never slowed, disappearing into the night. Moments later, a figure appeared. Eli Carter, younger but unmistakable, running toward the smoking wreck without hesitation. "Stop the video," Sterling demanded, standing up so quickly his chair toppled backward. "This is clearly doctored. Thompson, tell them about the—" "Sit down, Mr. Wade," Martha commanded, her voice like ice. "The footage continues." They watched as Eli pulled Rosa's unconscious form from the car, dragging her to safety mere minutes before flames erupted. The timestamp kept running as police arrived, but Eli had already melted away into the shadows. Rosa paused the video. "There's more. Ms. Keene?" Martha withdrew a leather-bound notebook from her briefcase. Her hands shook slightly as she opened it. "The night of the accident, Sterling Wade called me. He was drunk, panicked. He said he'd been at the wheel when something happened on the bridge. She took a deep breath. "I helped arrange the cover-up. The police report was altered. The dashcam footage was supposed to be destroyed." The boardroom erupted in shocked whispers. Sterling's face had gone pale, but his fixer Thompson moved toward the laptop. "This meeting is over. This evidence is inadmissible." "Don't touch that computer," came a new voice. Officer Henson stepped into the room, followed by 2 detectives in plain clothes. "Mr. Thompson, you're under arrest for witness tampering, evidence destruction, and conspiracy to obstruct justice." Thompson lunged for the door, but Henson was faster. The handcuffs clicked shut as Thompson struggled. "Sterling, don't say a word. They can't prove." "Actually, One of the detectives interrupted. We can. We have your text messages ordering ICE raids on Ms. Reyes, authorizing payments to create false websites about Mr. Carter, and coordinating with certain officers to lose evidence. Care to explain those? Sterling slumped in his chair, the fight draining from him. His lawyer Davidson quietly closed his briefcase and stepped away, shaking his head. Martha Keene stood, her authority no longer just for show. Mr. Wade, in light of this evidence and your actions against Ms. Reyes and her son, I am demanding your immediate resignation from the Meridian Board. Should you refuse, we will proceed with a vote of removal and forward all evidence to the District Attorney's Office. The other board members nodded in agreement, their faces set with resolve. Sterling looked around the room, searching for allies and finding none. His carefully constructed world of privilege and power was crumbling, and everyone could see it. The detectives led Thompson away as Martha continued. Furthermore, you will sign an agreement acknowledging paternity of Mateo Reyes and establishing appropriate support. Ms. Reyes and her son will be granted immediate protection under Meridian's legal team. Sterling's shoulders sagged. His voice, when it came, had lost all its usual polish. You can't. We can, Rosa interrupted, standing tall. And we will. For every worker you've cheated, every voice you've tried to silence. For a little boy who deserves to know his father without fear. For everyone who's been told to look the other way because it was easier than standing up for what's right. Martha picked up her gavel, its weight familiar in her hand. Mr. Wade, your resignation now. Sterling reached for the paper with trembling fingers, his signature a shaky surrender of everything he'd tried to protect. The sound of the gavel striking wood echoed through the boardroom like a final judgment, marking the end of his reign and the beginning of something new. Gray clouds hung low over the ICE detention center, but the crowd gathering outside didn't seem to notice the gloomy weather. Seniors from Meridian Hospital's volunteer group stood shoulder to shoulder with church members, hospital staff, and local veterans. Many held handmade signs with messages like, Free Anna, Mateo, and Families Belong Together. Deacon Harold's deep voice led the group in Amazing Grace, the melody rising above the facility's concrete walls. Rose stood near the front, her designer coat replaced by jeans and a warm sweater, holding a small American flag. Eli waited quietly beside her, his army dog tags visible against his clean white shirt. Inside the facility, wheels were turning. The pro bono lawyer Martha had arranged worked tirelessly, presenting evidence of Sterling's witness tampering and the community's overwhelming support. The humanitarian stay came through just as the morning shift changed. The heavy metal doors creaked open. Anna emerged first, looking smaller in her wrinkled clothes, dark circles under her eyes. But when she saw Mateo running toward her from the social worker's car, her whole body transformed. She dropped to her knees, arms wide. Mi amor, mi corazón. Anna's voice cracked as she caught her son, pulling him close. Mateo buried his face in her neck, his Spider-Man backpack still on his shoulders. Mommy, I was so scared, Mateo whispered, his small hands gripping her shirt. But I remembered what Mr. Eli said about being brave. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Mrs. Chen, the eldest of Meridian's volunteers at 87, dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Look at that baby with his mama, she said. That's all that matters. Officer Henson stepped forward, his police uniform a stark contrast to the ICE agents watching from their posts. He'd brought his dashcam footage to support Anna's case, proving Sterling's pattern of intimidation. Ma'am, he said gently to Anna, my car's right here, if you'd like a ride somewhere safe. Anna hesitated, still holding Mateo tight. Rose moved closer, her voice soft but firm. Anna, we've arranged a place for you both. Somewhere Sterling and his people can't find you. Will you trust us? Like you trusted us with the truth? Eli added, his steady gaze meeting Anna's. We've got your back now. Maya appeared from the crowd carrying a bag of fresh clothes and snacks she'd packed that morning. Here, Mateo, she said, pulling out his favorite Superman action figure. I thought you might want this. Mateo's eyes lit up, but he looked to his mother first. Anna nodded, managing a small smile. "Gracias, Maya. You are very kind." The group formed a protective circle as they walked to Officer Henson's car. Deacon Harold offered a quiet prayer. Veterans who'd heard about Anna's case through Eli stood at attention, a silent honor guard for a different kind of courage. "The lawyers say the humanitarian stay is just the beginning," Rose explained as they walked. "With the evidence we have against Sterling, there's a good chance for a more permanent solution." Anna clutched Mateo's hand. "But what if?" "No what-ifs today," Eli interrupted gently. "Right now, you and Mateo need rest. Everything else can wait." They reached Officer Henson's car, where he'd already installed a booster seat for Mateo. The boy looked up at Eli, his brown eyes serious. "Are the bad men going to come back for Mommy?" Eli knelt down to Mateo's height, his voice firm but gentle. His dog tags caught the light as he leaned forward. "No one will take you from your mama again." Anna's eyes filled with tears as Mateo threw his arms around Eli's neck. The crowd of supporters still chanted and sang in the background, but in this moment, it was just a small boy holding tight to a promise, and a mother beginning to believe in safety again. Officer Henson opened the car door, and Mrs. Chen stepped forward with a thick quilt she'd brought from home. "For the journey," she said, tucking it around Mateo once he was settled in his seat. "My grandmother made this. It's good for keeping nightmares away." Anna slid in next to her son, and Rose handed her an envelope. "Emergency funds from the hospital staff," she explained. "No strings attached, just neighbors helping neighbors." The car door closed softly, and Officer Henson started the engine. Through the window, Mateo pressed his small hand against the glass. Eli placed his larger one on the other side, a silent connection, a promise renewed. The police cruiser pulled away slowly, turning toward the safe house that Martha had arranged through her connections. The crowd began to disperse, but not before Deacon Harold led them in one final verse of Amazing Grace. The words floated after the departing car like a blessing. "Through many dangers, toils, and snares, we have already come." The Meridian Hospital boardroom buzzed with nervous energy as board members filed in for the emergency vote. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished oak table. Rosa Navarro stood at the head, her shoulders straight and her expression calm despite the tension in the air. Martha Keene, her silver hair neatly pinned back, cleared her throat. "Given recent events and the evidence presented, I move to reinstate Rosa Navarro as CEO of Meridian Hospital, effective immediately." Her voice carried authority that seemed to fill the room. "Those in favor?" Hands rose one by one until every board member's arm was raised. The vote was unanimous. Rosa's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. "Thank you for your trust. Now, we have work to do." She opened a leather portfolio and pulled out a document. "This is our new Workers and Families Initiative. It includes comprehensive reforms for wage equity, family leave, and childcare support." Down in the hospital's main lobby, Eli Carter watched the live feed on the wall-mounted TV with Maya at his side. His daughter squeezed his hand as Rosa continued speaking. "Our first action will be establishing the Workers' Families Trust," Rosa announced. "This fund will ensure that no employee has to choose between caring for their family and keeping their job." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "And, speaking of family, I'd like to address another matter." The screen split to show the lobby, where Eli stood watching. He straightened his janitor's uniform self-consciously as all eyes turned to him. "Elijah Carter exemplifies everything Meridian should stand for," Rosa continued. "When others looked away, he acted with courage and compassion. Not just once, but consistently, day after day." Maya beamed at her father as Rosa detailed the events of the past weeks, from the night of the snowstorm to the uncovering of the dashcam footage. Hospital staff gathered around, nodding and smiling. "Therefore," Rosa announced, "I am confirming Mr. Carter's promotion to Facilities and Community Care Liaison, effective immediately." She held up a badge. "This position has been created specifically to bridge the gap between our administration and our frontline workers." Officer Henson appeared with a small box containing Eli's new badge. Maya took it carefully, her hands trembling slightly with pride. The lobby had filled with hospital staff. Nurses pausing between rounds, cafeteria workers on break, and even some patients who had wandered down to witness the moment. "Dad," Maya said, her voice thick with emotion, "you always told me that doing the right thing matters more than being recognized for it." She opened the box, revealing the silver badge that read Elijah Carter, Facilities Community Care Liaison. Eli bent down slightly so Maya could pin the badge to his chest. Her fingers were careful but sure as she attached it, just as he had taught her to be precise in everything she did. When she finished, she stepped back and saluted playfully, causing ripples of warm laughter through the crowd. The badge caught the light as Eli straightened up, and he touched it gently. It represented more than just a promotion. It was acknowledgement of his dignity, his worth, and his unwavering commitment to helping others. "Thank you," he said simply, his deep voice carrying across the now quiet lobby. "But this isn't just about me. It's about all of us who show up every day to make Meridian what it should be, a place of healing and hope." Rosa's voice came through the speakers again. "Mr. Carter is right. This is about all of us. And today marks the beginning of a new chapter at Meridian, one where every voice matters, every worker counts, and every family is valued." The lobby erupted in applause. Maya hugged her father tight, and through the windows, the morning sun seemed to shine a little brighter, promising a new day for Meridian Hospital and all who worked within its walls. In the midst of the celebration, Ana Luz appeared with Mateo, both now free and safe. The little boy ran to Eli, who scooped him up in a big hug. "Mr. Eli!" Mateo exclaimed, pointing at the new badge. "It's so shiny." "That it is, buddy," Eli chuckled, setting him down gently. "That it is." The crowd began to disperse, returning to their duties with lighter hearts and renewed purpose. Maya stood beside her father, both of them watching as Rosa made her way down from the boardroom to join them in the lobby. The moment felt like a turning point, not just for Eli and his family, but for everyone at Meridian. The new badge on his chest caught the light again, a small but significant symbol of change, of justice served, and of hope restored. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in streaks of orange and pink as people gathered under the newly renovated Harrington Bridge. Paper lanterns swayed gently in the breeze, their soft glow growing stronger as dusk approached. The concrete pillars, once cold and imposing, now wore murals depicting scenes of community and hope. Eli Carter adjusted his vintage Navy suit, a gift from Deacon Harold's personal collection. The fabric felt different from his usual janitor's uniform, but Maya had insisted he looked absolutely dapper. He smiled, watching his daughter chatting with Officer Henson near the refreshment tables. The sound of children's laughter drew his attention to where Mateo played with other kids, their feet padding against the fresh grass of the new Riverside Park. Ana Luz watched from nearby, her face relaxed and happy as she talked with Martha Keene about the workers' family's trust they would oversee together. "Looking sharp, Mr. Carter?" Rosa's voice came from behind him. He turned to find her in a simple burgundy dress, her usual CEO power suit replaced by something more casual but no less elegant. "You clean up nice yourself, Ms. Navarro," he replied with a warm smile. The formality of their titles had become a gentle joke between them, a reminder of how far they'd come from that snowy night. The community had transformed the space under the bridge into something magical. String lights zigzagged overhead between the support beams, while round tables draped in white cloth dotted the area. Hospital staff, church members, and neighborhood residents mingled freely, the usual social barriers dissolved in the spirit of celebration. Deacon Harold's deep voice carried over the crowd as he stood near the newly installed bronze plaque. "Folks, if I could have your attention," he called out, and the chatter quieted. "Tonight we're here to celebrate more than just a bridge renovation. We're here to honor the everyday heroes among us." Maya appeared at Eli's side, slipping her hand into his and squeezing gently. He could feel her pride radiating as Deacon Harold continued. "This plaque reads, 'Dedicated to the Everyday Rescuers, those who step forward when others step back. And I can't think of two better examples than the people we honor tonight. Rosa moved closer to Eli as the deacons spoke about courage, truth, and the power of standing together. The plaque gleamed in the lantern light, its surface catching and reflecting the warm glow like a beacon. And now, Deacon Harold's eyes twinkled. I believe it's time for some music and dancing. He nodded to the small band set up in the corner, and the first notes of a familiar Motown melody filled the air. Mateo rushed over to Rosa, tugging at her dress. "Dance with me first," he insisted, and she laughed, letting him lead her in an enthusiastic spin. Eli watched them, feeling the rightness of the moment settle deep in his chest. The seniors from his church swayed to the music, while hospital staff members kicked off their shoes to join the dancing. Even Officer Henson showed off some surprisingly smooth moves, making Maya giggle. As the first song ended, the band smoothly transitioned into something slower, more romantic. Rosa finished her dance with Mateo, who immediately ran off to get another cookie from the dessert table. She made her way back to Eli, her eyes soft in the gathering dusk. The lanterns cast a gentle glow across her face as she stopped before him. "I believe you owe me a dance, Mr. Carter." "I suppose I do, Miss Navarro," he replied, taking her offered hand. Her fingers felt warm and sure in his as he led her to the makeshift dance floor. The music wrapped around them like silk as they began to move together. Other couples joined them, Anna with Deacon Harold, Maya with Officer Henson, but Eli barely noticed. His world had narrowed to the woman in his arms and the sweet, slow rhythm of the song. "You know," Rosa said quietly, "I used to think being strong meant never needing help, never letting anyone see behind the CEO mask." "And now?" Eli's voice was equally soft as they swayed to the music. "Now I know true strength is having the courage to let others in, to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." She looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the countless lights above them. "Thank you for teaching me that." They moved in perfect sync, their steps slow and measured. The lanterns cast dancing shadows around them, and the evening air carried the scent of late summer flowers from the new garden beds. Here, under the bridge that had once held such dark memories, something new and beautiful had taken root. "Your daughter is watching us, you know," Rosa murmured, a smile playing at her lips. "She looks rather pleased with herself." Eli chuckled, glancing briefly at Maya, who quickly pretended to be absorbed in conversation with Officer Henson. "She's been rooting for you since that first Sunday at church." "Smart girl," Rosa said, moving a fraction closer as they danced. "She takes after her father that way." The music continued to flow around them, the gentle Motown melody a perfect backdrop to this moment. Under the warm glow of 100 lanterns, surrounded by the community they'd helped bring together, Eli and Rosa danced slowly, their joined hands a bridge of their own making. The light caught the new plaque as they turned, its words now etched, not just in bronze, but in the heart of the community. Dedicated to the everyday rescuers, those who step forward when others step back. And in that moment, as they moved together under the twinkling lights, they were more than CEO and janitor, more than rescuer and rescued. They were simply two people who had chosen to step forward, again and again, until they found their way to each other. The afternoon sun cast long shadows beneath the Harrington Bridge as Sterling Wade stood at a small table, his jaw tight as he signed the final papers. His normally immaculate suit looked slightly rumpled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. The workers' family's trust document lay before him, its fresh ink glistening. Ana Luz Reyes watched from across the table, her shoulders straight and proud. She wore a simple blue dress, but carried herself with newfound confidence. Martha Keene stood beside her, nodding encouragingly as Sterling's pen moved across the page. "Initial here as well," Martha said, tapping a spot on the document. "This confirms Anna's position as co-chair of the trust." Sterling's hand paused for just a moment before he scrawled his initials. "The first quarterly deposit has already been made," he said stiffly, not meeting anyone's eyes. Rosa stepped forward, her voice firm but calm. "Thank you, Sterling. This trust will make a real difference for our workers and their families." She turned to Anna with a warm smile. "Would you like to say a few words?" Anna took a deep breath, glancing at Matteo, who sat nearby drawing pictures with Maya. "This trust isn't just about money," she began, her voice soft but steady. "It's about dignity, about making sure no other mother has to choose between speaking up and keeping her child safe." The small crowd gathered under the bridge murmured in agreement. Hospital workers, church members, and neighborhood families had all come to witness this moment. Eli stood at the edge of the group, watching proudly as Anna continued. "As co-chair, I promise to make sure these resources help those who need them most," Anna said. "We'll provide legal aid, educational support, and emergency assistance." Her eyes met Sterling's briefly. "Every child deserves to grow up feeling secure and valued." Sterling nodded curtly, gathered his papers, and walked quickly to his waiting car. As he drove away, the tension in the air dissolved, replaced by the sounds of celebration. Someone turned on music, and the aroma of food began wafting from the potluck tables. Deacon Harold's deep laugh boomed across the gathering as he helped set up more chairs. "Now this is what community looks like," he declared, accepting a plate of tamales from one of the hospital cafeteria workers. Maya and Matteo ran past, chasing soap bubbles that Officer Henson was blowing into the air. "Mama, look!" Matteo called to Anna, his face glowing with joy. "The bubbles look like tiny moons." Rosa moved through the crowd, stopping to chat with everyone: janitors, nurses, security guards, and neighborhood elders. She'd shed her usual corporate attire for a casual blouse and slacks, looking more relaxed than she had in months. The late afternoon light softened as volunteers began lighting the paper lanterns strung between the bridge supports. Each lantern bore messages of hope written by community members. "Standing together. Truth lights the way. Dignity for all." At one of the long tables, Rosa's mother was teaching a group of hospital volunteers how to serve pozole properly, while Deacon Harold's wife proudly displayed her famous cornbread. The mixture of aromas and languages created its own kind of music under the bridge. Eli helped carry chairs and tables from the bridge area to the hospital lawn, where more people were gathering. The grass was still damp from afternoon rain, but no one seemed to mind. Children spread blankets on the ground, while their parents set up food and drinks. "Need a hand with that?" Rosa asked, appearing beside Eli as he balanced a stack of chairs. "Always," he replied with a warm smile. They worked together, setting up seating areas where people could eat and talk comfortably. The sky turned purple and gold as sunset approached, and the lanterns began to glow more brightly. Their light reflected in the river below the bridge, creating double streams of brightness. On the hospital lawn, more lanterns were being lit, turning the space into a garden of gentle light. Martha Keene joined Anna at one of the tables, sharing stories about their plans for the trust. "We'll start accepting applications next week," Martha explained to the group gathered around them. "Priority goes to emergency needs and educational support." Anna nodded, pulling out a notebook where she'd been collecting ideas. "We're also setting up a mentoring program," she added. "So many of our workers have valuable skills to share." The celebration spread across the hospital lawn as more people arrived after their shifts. Rosa and Eli found themselves at a table near the edge of the gathering, surrounded by a mix of hospital staff and neighborhood residents. Someone passed them bowls of steaming pozole and thick slices of cornbread. "Try it with the green sauce," Rosa suggested to the young nurse sitting across from them. "My mother made it specially." Laughter rippled through their group as people shared stories and food. The lantern light danced across their faces, transforming the hospital lawn into something magical. Even the old brick walls seemed to glow warmly in the gathering dusk. A gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers from the newly planted garden beds. Another community project that had sprung up in the wake of recent events. Children darted between the tables, their shoes wet with evening dew, while their parents called them back for second helpings. The sound of spoons, clinking against bowls, mixed with conversation and laughter, creating a symphony of community. Under the soft light of the lanterns, Past tensions and divisions seemed to fade away, replaced by the simple joy of sharing food and friendship on a summer evening. The evening shift was ending at Meridian Hospital. Eli Carter moved through his familiar routine, checking doors and turning off unnecessary lights. His new position as facilities community care liaison meant different responsibilities, but he still liked to help with the evening lockup when he could. It kept him grounded, reminded him where he came from. His footsteps echoed in the quiet hallway as he made his final rounds. The smell of cleaning solution lingered in the air, mixing with the antiseptic hospital scent he'd grown so accustomed to over the years. Through the windows, he could see the last traces of sunset painting the sky in deep purples and blues. Officer Henson gave him a friendly wave from his security station. "Good night, Mr. Carter." "Just Eli," he corrected with a warm smile. "Some things don't need to change." The officer chuckled. "Fair enough. Drive safe, Eli." At the side entrance, Eli pulled out his keys, the metal warm from being in his pocket. He could see his breath in the cool evening air as he stepped outside. The door clicked shut behind him with a familiar sound, one he'd heard thousands of times before, but somehow tonight it felt different. As he turned to head toward the parking lot, he stopped short. There stood Rosa Navarro, CEO of Meridian Hospital, holding 2 paper coffee cups and a brown paper bag that smelled wonderfully of food. She wore casual clothes instead of her usual business attire, dark jeans and a soft sweater that made her look younger, more relaxed. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, holding up the bag. "The new Thai place downtown? I remembered you mentioning it." Eli's face broke into a warm smile. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." She handed him one of the coffee cups. "Besides, I had a feeling you'd still be here, making sure everything was locked up tight." "Old habits," he admitted, taking a sip of the coffee, prepared exactly the way he liked it. "You remembered." "I remember everything about you, Eli Carter." Her voice was soft but certain. They stood there for a moment, the comfortable silence between them filled with unspoken understanding. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and possibility. "Maya's at study group tonight," Eli said. "We could eat at the picnic tables by the garden, if you'd like. The seniors planted those new night-blooming flowers." Rosa's eyes crinkled at the corners as she smiled. "I'd like that very much." They walked together through the hospital's community garden, where the moonflowers were indeed beginning to open their white petals to the evening sky. The picnic area was peaceful, with old-fashioned lanterns casting a warm glow over the wooden tables. As they settled onto the bench, Rosa began unpacking the food: pad thai, spring rolls, and fragrant curry. The steam rose in the cool air as they arranged the containers between them. "Remember the first time we sat together like this?" Rosa asked, passing him a pair of chopsticks. "Right after that board meeting when we were planning the Workers' Trust?" "You were so nervous about getting the wording right in the proposal," Eli recalled, smiling at the memory. "We stayed up half the night with legal pads spread all over my kitchen table. And Maya made us that incredible coffee at midnight. What did she call it?" "The Nursing Student Special," Eli laughed. "Guaranteed to keep you awake through any all-nighter." They ate slowly, sharing stories and comfortable silences. Above them, the stars were beginning to appear, and the lights from the Harrington Bridge created a gentle arc across the darkening sky. The bridge that had once held such painful memories for Rosa now stood as a symbol of change, of healing. "I never thanked you properly," Rosa said suddenly, setting down her fork. "Not just for saving my life that night under the bridge, but for everything after, for showing me what real courage looks like." Eli shook his head slightly. "You don't need to thank me. You did all the hard parts yourself. Standing up to Sterling, fighting for Anna and Mateo, changing how this hospital treats its workers. But you gave me the strength to do it." She reached across the table, her hand finding his. "You showed me that doing the right thing isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up, day after day, and helping where you can." Eli's fingers intertwined with hers, warm despite the cool evening air. "That goes both ways, you know. Watching you stand up to the board, risk everything for what's right. It reminded me why I came back to work here after the Army. Sometimes the biggest battles are fought in the quietest ways. They sat there for a while longer, talking softly as the evening deepened around them. The garden's solar lights came on one by one, like earthbound stars. From somewhere nearby, crickets began their evening chorus. Finally, Rosa glanced at her watch and sighed. I should probably head home. Early meeting tomorrow. I'll walk you to your car, Eli said, standing and gathering their empty containers. Actually, Rosa smiled. I was hoping you might drive me. Just like old times? Eli's heart warmed at the memory of that first snowy night, how far they'd come since then. I'd be honored. They cleaned up their dinner, making sure to leave the picnic area tidy. As they walked toward Eli's truck, their hands found each other again naturally, as if they'd been doing this for years instead of months. Behind them, the Harrington Bridge glowed softly in the night, its lanterns a string of golden lights against the dark sky. The same bridge that had once witnessed tragedy now stood witness to something new beginning, something built on trust, understanding, and the quiet courage of doing what's right. Their footsteps crunched softly on the gravel of the parking lot, and the evening air carried the sweet scent of the moonflowers. Above them, more stars were appearing, and hope seemed to rise with them into the night sky, as natural and inevitable as breathing. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next. If you enjoyed the story of Elijah Eli Carter, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.